Hello, my name is Aida Cuadrado, and today I'm going to share with you my business ethics presentation. Hopefully, I do not have Google fail on me like it has been for the last 3 minutes. So, if it does, bear with me, and we'll continue with our presentation. So, I want to share with you the agenda for our moments that we're going to share here together. I'm going to share with you today the definition of what business ethics is, a timeline and history of business ethics in the workplace, along with some historical cases and examples of how business ethics came to be. And towards the end, we're going to share a little bit about what's happening right now regarding business ethics. And I hope that you find this presentation helpful and help you understand our class a little bit better. So, business ethics defined is what a constitution constitutes right or wrong behavior in the application of moral principles in a business context. Ethics is a moral principle and values applied to social behavior. During my time reading and researching for my project, I came across this really great source from Santa Clara University that really points out that most of code of conducts that we currently have in businesses have huge biblical impacts. And when you have a moment, I would love for you to read this quick quote and see what you think about it. But for time's sake, I'm going to continue to move through our presentation. So next, the history of business ethics. What has changed because of these cases? So I want you to take some time out to really think and process kind of the information that I'm sharing with you. And I want to know, like personally, have you benefited from the history of business ethics? Like because this concept was introduced to your organization or corporation or to the world, did you benefit from it? And what is a larger moral, ethical context and or questions that you might have for yourself right now in the world that we are living in 2017, 2018? So let's keep going. So as you can see, it wasn't until the 1960s where this like term of business ethics really came up. But as we know, the Bible has been around for a long time, and it has called for us to be and treat each other as we wish to be treated. There's plenty of business ethics quotes within the Bible, and let's just be honest. Human beings have historically been kind of terrible at business ethics. And I say that because before the 1960s, we all knew that slavery existed, but business ethics back then were very different. Colonialism was a business ethic where we would, come in, take over the resources and property of someone else's and exploit labor. But it was part of the business ethics, right? So these terrible things were happening, and throughout time, the current moments that we are living in play a huge role in the business ethics that are currently happening. And so that says a lot about the people at the time. That says a lot about what's important at the time. And how we look at each other as human beings plays a huge role in what's happening also in the time. And so as we measure our business ethics, let's pay attention to like the historical context of what's happening at the same time. And I feel like that's very important. So it wasn't until the 1960s where you saw this huge push for how corporations and organizations were called to be in relationship with people as laborers, as employees. And because of that, you had a non-discrimination act that passed. You had the civil rights movement that passed. You have women's rights that passed in 1968. There's tons of things that are happening in the 60s. And because of it, women like me, women of color, are able to work and be bosses and take on leadership within the organization, right? So because of that, in the 1960s, the people were calling, hey, I want to work for businesses that have a true vision. And so that you see organizations responding to that. In the 70s, again, the 80s was another big time for, our ethical climate. But I'm going to go back just one slide here. I am being kicked out, but that's okay. And this is exactly what happened earlier. So we're just going to jump right back into the presentation and pick up right where we left off. So let this load, and I'm going to scroll up here. Yes. I wanted to go back to the 1970s, because it was in 1978 where you saw a big shift happen in how we started really being in a relationship with people in the global arena, because at that time businesses were actually paying other governments to be in relationship with them in America. So that was huge. That had a big impact. When you could buy relationships, there had to be some kind of regulation with that. And so in 1980s, you see the social contract between employers and employees is redefined. And you see a real implementation of ethics and compliant programs and developments. You see General Dynamics establishments for the first business ethic office, and some companies create ombudsman positions in addition to ethics officers roles. And so I really it's a really exciting time for business and ethics in the 80s. And also because there's and the reason why you see all of these things happening is because there's also a lot of corruption happening at the same time, and people are calling for a different way of regulations to happen. And here you see in the 1990s, the class action lawsuit between Electric Tobacco and Pacific Gas, and professionalization of ethic functions, launch of Ethnic Officer Association. So you see Transparency International releases the first annual Corruption Perception Index. There is this really call to really regulate what is actually happening in the world, because till then nothing was really happening. So in the 2000s, you still see this business ethics is still a challenge. One, I would say that the world has changed. We're experiencing terrorism. We're experiencing corruption in our elections. We're seeing our private information being stolen. And so now there's what is the question of what can be sold and what can be shared that's private and personal is another a business ethic that is currently going through revamping and a better understanding. And it's happening right now with Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and Google. And I'll get into a little bit more of that as we continue, but I just wanted to share that there's this huge ethics timeline where there has been this moral call from the people and the government to really regulate the relationships that we are in with as employers and employees, and how we're going to be with each other. So why is business ethics an important topic in the world today? I'm a big video person, and so I wanted to share with you this video. If we can get this to load, we will be okay. And it looks like we have an advertisement, so I'm going to continue to speak. I really love this video. I thought it was very helpful. It explained what we meant by, why is business ethics important today, and I want to make sure that you guys hear it. So here we go.
Finding out that there are 1 million kids a year.
And here we go. We have another ad. I really miss the days where we didn't have an ad. I wish this was part of the moral and business ethic of today, where you can choose what you want to see versus being forced to watch what you don't have to watch. So bear with me as we continue to wait for this out. Their ethics again plays a huge role in who we say we are in the world, and I just found it to be very helpful. So here we go. Thanks for bearing it with me.
Business ethics is the system of laws and guidelines by which business professionals and corporations operate in a fair, legal, and moral fashion. It's a broad topic covering everything from a corporation's responsibilities to the public, corporate social responsibility, to specific laws prohibiting illegal practices in the workplace. When ethical guidelines are followed, trust develops between workers and management, as well as between the public and the corporation. Thus, business ethics lead to a more productive workplace. Most corporations have a policy limiting the size of gifts given to customers to a small monetary amount. For example, you can give a customer a dozen golf balls, but not a new set of golf clubs. This is to prevent kickbacks or bribes. If the customer is going to do business with you, it's because your product or service is needed, not because you gave them incentives outside the core business of the company. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act was created in 1977 in response to a rash of U.S. companies bribing foreign government officials to award contracts to their businesses. The act forbids corporations and business executives from paying money or other valuables to foreign governments and officials in order to secure business.
Yeah, so I hope you found that helpful. I absolutely did. I think it's important to hear about those things and like what were these moments, and I just love videos because I just find them so much helpful. So much I learned from them in a better way. So again, having problems with my Google Slides, so bear with me. This is kind of like the day I've been having, and so I just appreciate any patience you could bear with me. I'm sure it's because it's all online, and it's been an interesting day, right? So what are some of the current business ethics cases that we share? So you saw earlier that, I said that it's usually because of the world is calling for corporations to be better regulated and especially within the relationship of each other and who they are for us and who they are in the world and being more responsible, ethically responsible for their actions. And 2017 was a very interesting year for a lot of big corporations. And so I found another really great video that I'd like to share with you right quick about 2017. So let's go there. And the 10 biggest business scandals of 2017. So hopefully we can get this video to play. And it's just not my Wi-Fi that's acting up, possibly.
Oh my god. Oh my god. No, this is wrong. Oh my god. Look at what you did to him.
So yeah, in conclusion, you know, Leviticus says it best when he says, "Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another, do not defraud your neighbor or rob him, do not hold back the wages of a hired man overnight." And you know, I think sometimes it's easy for us to think of just the bottom line versus like what is really right. And I think sometimes it's easier for us to think about, you know, labor not connected to people. And because of that, we tend to sin as a human race. And so I hope that as we continue to grow, that our bitterness for maybe being strapped for money at a time or being very tired doesn't make it, or greed, right, for wanting more, doesn't make us look over the fact that there's a higher calling to treat each other with respect and to look at people with the divine love that God has created all of us in. And so I appreciate you taking the time to be with me and hanging in there through all these technical difficulties. I've been trying to do this for a couple hours and just really appreciate it. And I wanted to list my references here and hope that you've taken some time to learn a little bit of what's happening here in the world with business ethics. See if you have experienced any business ethics wrongdoing or feel like you should call for your organization to have business ethics, better business ethics. And so thank you, and I hope that you have a fantastic evening.